The head of the Central Intelligence Agency, Burns, warned against provoking the Russians too much. He actually warned, he wrote a very fine document.
The governing dynamic of the world is that we have this extremely powerful empire which took over the mantle from the British after the Second World War and enforces its will around the world and has constructed an economic system and a global economic system that basically pools resources and wealth from around the world, particularly the global south, but the global north too, to America. And it doesn't go to the people of America, it goes to a very small elite in America. And it's an empire which is different to previous empires in the sense that previously that the British and others would put garrisons of troops and have fought. It was a formal empire. And what America has constructed is what's called often called an informal empire, or an open door empire, which basically operates on the principle that you can elect the leaders you want if they open your country up to American investment, to American corporations and American control. If you don't, then we'll take you out. And there's been countless examples of that since the Second World War, from Chile in 1973, Guatemala in 1954, Brazil in 1964, Venezuela in 2002, which failed. Countless examples of the Americans basically saying you can't elect or you can't have a sovereign country effectively. And so when we talk about an economic elite and we live in a hugely unequal society, domestically but also internationally, you cannot understand that unless you understand that this is not a mistake. This is the result of a system which has been constructed by the Americans and allies since the Second World War. So I'll hand over to Tariq now, and I guess with the question of, do you agree with what I've just said?
This is a leading question with Matt. Yeah, I do. I think, to be perfectly frank, you've been a bit mild. I mean, we're living in a very, very serious and dangerous time. And I just finished a new book some months ago, which is my memoirs from 80 to 2024. And the last chunk of the book, I found it very difficult to write because of what was going on in Gaza. I mean, I couldn't keep my mind on the page where I had to finish the book according to a deadline, and at the same time see on the live stream genocide on the alternative networks, very little of it on the mainstream networks. And one of the side effects of these horrific events in the Middle East has been that the credibility of the United States and its Western allies now is at rock bottom. When the ICC, the International Criminal Court, says that this is genocide and says that Netanyahu and others should be brought before a court, like some of the Yugoslav leaders were during the Yugoslav war, and is ignored. The senior judge tells us that he's been under heavy pressure from the British government, from the Germans, and the United States, obviously, not to prosecute Netanyahu. The South African government very courageously did the same thing in a international court of law. And apart from the West, by that I mean the United States and its allies, with honorable exceptions like Spain, nobody in the rest of the world believes the West any longer. Have no doubt about it. Throughout the South, people believe that the Western world is degenerated, that it doesn't believe in the rule of law, that it has no right to tell off any government in the world, however awful that government is. We're not going to listen to you because we don't trust you. You've lied your way through this genocide, and a year later, it's still taking place in front of our very eyes. I mean, to be honest, I was quite nervous when they put this on me. I said, I hope it's been checked out for security, because I don't want to be blown up by the Israelis in Kenwood. So that's the world we live in. And it's a thing that people can't take. They will take it in 25 years' time, when they'll say, oh my God, did we actually sit through that? And the answer will be, yes, most of you did. You did sit through it. So we're in a very dangerous state with the United States. Two big wars going on. Ukraine, which could be ended through negotiations. Most people realize this. The head of the Central Intelligence Agency, Burns, warned against provoking the Russians too much. He actually warned, he wrote a very fine document saying if you keep poking the bear, it's going to turn on you. An American academic, Mary Srott, has written a whole book explaining this. But they want to punish Russia for their own reasons. It's not got all that much to do with the Ukraine. I think most Ukrainians and most Russians want to negotiate an end to this war as soon as possible. Is this being reflected, this view, being reflected in any mainstream newspaper in this country? In the FT? No. In the Guardian? No. In the Observer? No. On the BBC? No. So with this war, and the way it's been fought, and the propaganda aligned to it, we have actually seen a huge decline in what the press reports and what it doesn't report. And so young people, I'm not surprised, don't bother reading the newspapers. I mean, I find it very difficult to. I basically read some of them to see how appalling they are. And that is why books like this and Matt Kennard's work becomes extremely important, because investigative journalism is out. Very rarely does any serious investigative journalism take place. And we see effectively that you have to turn to Al Jazeera, you have to turn to television stations from other parts of the world to get some glimmering of the truth. Will this change? I doubt it. I mean, we have the United States, which proclaims it's fighting for free speech, for freedom. It locks up journalists. In Britain, the judiciary played an appalling role in the Julian Assange case. Truly appalling. We have a prime minister now in power who behaves and sounds like a state implant rather than a normal politician. I mean, that's what we are living through at the present time, and very little, if any, a criticism of this state and what's happening side by side with it. Matt has talked a bit about the globe, but what is happening is that we are now having a hollowing out of the democratic process itself, where centre-left, supposedly Labour, centre-right, supposedly Tory, both pander to the far right. Meloni in Italy, Farage in this country, and try and appeal to the same audience. So the Labour Prime Minister, so-called, goes to Italy, talks to Meloni, who is the Prime Minister there, and in lineal descent from Mussolini's fascists. Lineal descent. And who says that the best thing to do with refugees and migrants is not to stop the war, which drives people in tens of thousands away from the war zones in their countries, not to stop this war, but to actually make sure that the refugees don't die in our local waters and are all sent to Albania, where we can weed out the ones, the few, the handful we will take. This is the politics by which we are surrounded. And quite honestly, we are seeing the response and the reaction to this for the first time since the Second World War. We have independent MPs elected to the left of the Labour Party. I mean, the way they treated Corbyn, as has now come out, is appalling. I mean, just a big scandal. Everyone now knows this. They don't even try and hide it. Both his own party and the various Zionist lobbies that exist and operate in this country. So the response to that in an unfavorable and undemocratic electoral system is that despite this system, 5 MPs have been elected to the left of Labour, a handful of Green MPs, so you have a larger number of people to the left of Labour than in British history since the Second World War. That's how fed up people are getting. And the response to this is what? Islamophobia. It's the Muslims' fault. Go and kill some more. We've already killed almost 1 million in Iraq. We're killing Palestinian Muslims and Christians, actually, for that matter, every day in Palestine. Let's provoke the Iranians into a new war. Let's threaten the Russians that we're going to use British weaponry and US weaponry in the Ukraine. Where will this lead? Sooner or later, there will be a response from the other side. What it'll be, I don't know. I have no idea. But there will be a response.
To continue watching this video, click the link in the top left or in the description below. Or visit iai.tv for more debates and talks from the world's leading thinkers on today's biggest ideas.